watching South Asia Newsline. And now for all the details. Families of victims of the Air India plane crash gathered in western Ahmedabad city on Friday to remember their loved ones on the first anniversary of one of India's deadliest aviation disasters. A Boeing 787 Dreamliner operated by Air India crashed into a medical college hostel during lunchtime, moments after taking off on June 12, 2025, on a flight from Ahmedabad to London, Gatwick. British High Commissioner to India, Lindy Cameron, joined bereaved families at the event where mourners observed a minute of silence and offered prayers before a memorial dedicated to the victims. The 241 victims included 53 British nationals. Only one passenger survived the disaster.
I'm just here to remember the victims and their families.
Heartbroken families also visited the crash site to pay tribute to their loved ones, while a plantation drive and blood donation camp were also organized. The site, still marked by charred buildings and burnt vehicles, remains a stark reminder of the tragedy. Investigators are yet to publish a final report into the deadly crash, with sources citing the need to complete an analysis of the plane's engines.
बहुत याद आती है मेरे छोटे छोटे बच्चे वही रखता था मेरे दोनों बच्चे इसके बिना तो रह भी नहीं पा रहे थे वो मेरे घर दौड़ा आता था मेरे बच्चे को लेने के लिए आज वो दिन याद आ रहे कलेजा फट जाता है.
Moving on, India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar has strongly defended New Delhi's purchase of Russian oil, pushing back against criticism from Western nations. Speaking in Finland, Jaishankar argued that India's decisions were guided by national interests and energy security, while questioning the moral consistency of Western powers. Jaishankar argued that New Delhi's approach was aimed at protecting consumers and ensuring energy security for a nation of more than 1 billion people. He accused Europe of applying double standards when it comes to global security and energy policy, and pointed to India's long-standing concerns about military equipment supplied by Western countries to nations in the region. Jaishankar said Europe has sold weapons that have ultimately been used against India, while India has never posed a security threat to European countries. Jaishankar's comments reflect New Delhi's increasingly assertive diplomatic posture as it seeks to balance strategic partnerships with both Western nations and Russia.
I buy oil. I buy oil based on cost and availability. So at that point of time, much of the oil available on the market was Russian because the Europeans were essentially buying up the Middle East oil, which was our traditional supply. So circumstances pushed us in a certain direction.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the US attack on a Palau-flagged oil tanker off the coast of Oman that killed 3 Indian seafarers. His spokesperson, Stephen Dujarric, has said the UN fully supports the strong condemnation issued by the International Maritime Organization, which described the US strike as unacceptable and called for the protection of seafarers, civilian shipping, and freedom of navigation. The attack comes amid heightened tensions in the Gulf following Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the US blockade of Iranian ports. India has termed the strike on commercial shipping deeply worrisome and lodged a strong protest with Washington. The issue is also expected to feature during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with US President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G7 summit next year. The issue is also expected to feature during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with US President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G7 summit next week. The 3 Indian sailors killed in the attack were identified as deck cadet Aditya Sharma, engine fitter Shivanand Chaurasia, and chief engineer Patlala Suresh. In Uttar Pradesh, grieving family members and friends gathered at Chaurasia's residence as relatives mourned his death.
हमारे जाऊ के बुला दिलो सरकार हमारे बच्चन के हमारे आदमी के बुलवाओ हमारे लड़कन के देखो हमारे सास ससुर के हमारे नाना देवर के देखो अरे बाबा
मित्र नहीं था वो हमारा भाई था जैसे वो गांव जब पढ़ाई पास कर दिया था ना तो हमारे साथ में ही गया था पहली बार वो कबाड़ी उतना कोई अपना इज्जत नहीं कर सकता जितना वो हमारा करता था.
And as protests over the violence in POJK continues to draw international attention, activists in the UK have intensified protests to demand justice and accountability. British MP Bob Blackman has also condemned the crackdown, calling it a despicable attack on civilians. A report.
Political activists from Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir have continued protests outside Pakistani consulates in the UK to condemn the ongoing crackdown on protesters in POJK by Pakistan. Demonstrators raised anti-Pakistan slogans and strongly criticized the Pakistani military leadership over the use of force against civilians participating in protests in Rawalakot and Kodli. The protest on Thursday in Bradford saw demonstrators alleging that security forces carried out a violent response to largely peaceful demonstrations, resulting in several deaths and numerous injuries. Participants called for accountability, justice for the victims, and greater international attention to the situation in POJK. Meanwhile, British MP Bob Blackman has strongly condemned Pakistan's crackdown on protesters in POJK, calling it a despicable attack on civilians, and expressed concern over reports that more than 30 people were killed and hundreds injured. He urged the UK government to summon Pakistan's High Commissioner and seek accountability. Blackman said 30 British MPs had written to the Foreign Secretary over the violence in the occupied region, reflecting growing international concern.
Well, the reality is that you've got peaceful protesters who, my understanding, were just demonstrating their concerns. They pose no threat to the military. This is the fundamental issue. So even in those circumstances, then they should have been allowed to carry out their peaceful protest. If they posed a threat to the military, then the military should have used. So they certainly shouldn't be using live ammunition on peaceful protesters under any circumstances. So, that's why so many people have been killed and so many injured as a result.
And India and Bangladesh have concluded the 57 Director General level Border Coordination Conference in New Delhi and have agreed to strengthen border cooperation through enhanced intelligence sharing, coordinated patrols, and joint action against cross-border crime. The 4-day discussions between India's Border Security Force and the border guard Bangladesh came amid tensions over the issue of undocumented migrants across the border without following due process. Both sides discussed illegal and inadequate border crossings, human trafficking, smuggling, border deaths, and the implementation of the Coordinated Border Management Plan. Both sides reaffirmed their commitment to maintaining peace, tranquility, and stability along the India-Bangladesh border, the statement said. It added that both the countries would strengthen coordinated patrols, enhance vigilance, improve real-time information sharing, and step up joint action against trans-border criminal networks. Bangladesh has increased patrols, intelligence operations, and drone surveillance along the frontier. While in India's West Bengal, the ruling BJP has sought verification of over 2,860 suspected Bangladeshi nationals living in India without documentation. The top border officials will next meet in Dhaka in November. In the hills of eastern Nepal, Rudraksh, revered by Hindus and Buddhists alike, is transforming lives and generating millions of dollars for local farmers. But as demand from China rises, concerns are growing over the use of chemicals. Take a look.
Bhojpur district in eastern Nepal has earned a new identity, the country's Rudraksh capital. These sacred seeds are driving a booming international trade. Farmer and trader Ashok Karki, at his orchard, has spent more than 3 decades cultivating Rudraksh trees. Ashok says, the business has changed dramatically. A rapidly expanding Chinese market has transformed the economics of Rudraksh cultivation.
अब यो नेचुरल दाना अलिक काँडे काँडे दानाहरूलाई अलिक त्यसको जातहरूलाई हार्मोनल औषधि हान्ने हो फुलमै जस्तै फुलमा भन्दा नि कोपिलादेखि नै
यसको 3-4 पटकको प्रोसेस हुन्छ त्यसलाई हेरेर हान्ने त्यो हानिसकेपछि चाहिँ दानाको बडी स्ट्रक्चर अलिक खदिलो बलियो भरिलो हेर्न राम्रो भएकोले गर्दा त्यो दानाहरू चाहिँ अत्यधिक 100% नै चाइना जान्छ
The growing Chinese demand has also altered farming practices. According to traders, buyers increasingly favor larger, more visually attractive beads. To meet that demand, some farmers use plant growth regulators to enhance the appearance of the seeds. The mayor argues that plant growth regulators are commonly used in agriculture and can be safe when applied correctly. However, Karki warns that excessive use could damage both the trees and future harvests.
अब खास गरेर यो त्यो केमिकल्स भन्दा पनि फर्टिलाइजर हो त्यो खास गरेर यहाँ मैले लगाएको चाहिँ साथीहरुले हेर्दाखेरि त्यो चाहिँ पीजीआर भन्छ प्लान्ट ग्रोथ रेगुलेटर जुन चाहिँ अरु फलफुलमा पनि लाउन सकिन्छ र लगाइरहेका हुन्छन् जस्तै तपाईको चाइनाबाट आउने स्याउ भन्नु इन्डियाबाट आउने जति पनि फलफुल छन् त्यसमा पीजीआर को प्रयोग गरेको हुन्छ फर्टिलाइजर माइक्रोन्युट्रिएन्ट फर्टिलाइजर हो त्यो
Rudraksh beads hold deep religious significance in Hindu tradition, where they are believed to be linked to the tears of Lord Shiva. For many Indian buyers, authenticity remains critical. The impact of such farming practices is reflected in the prices. Common five-faced Rudraksh seeds that once sold for just a few rupees now fetch significantly higher rates. Rare multi-faced varieties can command hundreds of thousands, and in some cases millions, of Nepali rupees. Local officials estimate that Rudraksh exports generate roughly 100 crore rupees annually for the municipality.
That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time next week.